Hey, how's it going? Hope your day is going well. And in this video, what we're going to do is continue to build on our team section video, where specifically we're going to add a little bit more responsive and adaptive design to our previous work. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the project. Okay, so here we are in the project. And as you can see, we're going to start exactly where we left off from the last video. Except that what we're going to do from the structure standpoint is that we're going to add a little bit more HTML to our HTML file to actually add a little bit more structure around the team member images. And so what we're going to do is just this, but if you download this project, this should already be there because for the most part, it's nothing that's special to begin with. So, you can add this onto the project that you're already working on, or you can just download the project and this change should already be there. So that's pretty much all we're going to do to make our design more responsive, at least from the HTML standpoint. Now, if we navigate to our style, that's pretty much where we're going to do the bulk of our work. And what we're going to use to make our design more responsive is we're going to use CSS media queries. Now, if you never heard of media queries, or maybe a little bit, or you heard a little bit before this, well, what media queries are is a feature in CSS that allows you to respond or really target different features of your website, basically with CSS. So let's say your website is going to run within a web browser, and just a normal web browser. Okay, well, you can kind of change your website based on that. Or let's just say your website is let's say somebody's gonna try to print your website, well, and you want to change the design of your website so that it can look a little bit better when they print your website. Okay, that's another thing that you can target and kind of adapt to. Now, specifically what we're gonna do is we're going to target the size of the website, or specifically the width of our website. That way, when our website is gonna when a person views our website like in a smaller web browser, like their mobile phone or maybe even on a tablet, it should be able to look a little bit better and respond to that environment and have it look better. Yeah, now that's just like kind of like an overview of what media queries are. But another key feature that we need to understand when it comes to responsiveness is the concept of mobile first design. Or another way of saying is that when you are designing your website or creating or just trying to make your website in general, what you should do is focus primarily on what will your website look like from the smallest view standpoint. Specifically, what would it look like when on your phone, on a mobile device? And then what you will do is kind of, as the screen becomes a little bit bigger, so like when it goes up to like a tablet that's a little bit bigger than a phone, all the way up to like just a normal desktop. Well, each one of those is going to have a different size requirement for that. And so and sometimes you will like to make your website different at those different, what they call break points, at a different like width break points. And so that's kind of like the essence of what a mobile first design really is coming from. You should really start from the smallest screen first. How does your design look on the smallest screen, and then work your way up as the screen becomes bigger? What do your design look like as the screen becomes bigger? So now, with that being said, what we have here is that we actually, from our standpoint, at least from right here, what we have done is basically done the complete opposite, where we have designed our website from the standpoint of how does it look from a desktop standpoint first. And we didn't even think about, well, we did think about, but just for an example standpoint, we did not design it from a mobile standpoint. Now, I've done it like that because a lot of the times you will encounter a lot of situations where you will have a website that built specifically to run on a desktop, and now they will like to update it so that it can look better or more usable on smaller devices, tablets, mobile devices, and things like that. And so that's a very real world use case from going from how can we take a design that was built from a desktop standpoint and how can we shrink it down, right? You account at a lot. So that's why we have went with this particular way of building this particular project. And so now if you just go back to our design and we see that, okay, now our design, it looks pretty good. It looks fairly fine on a desktop. Let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see exactly what this will look like. Okay, now we're just gonna go. Now, if you want to like play around with different sizes of like your design, what you can do is open up Chrome or Chromium, anything like that. You're gonna want to go to your inspect, maybe right click and click inspect right here, and then once you have that open, once you have like this panel on the bottom open, you're gonna click this button right here that would allow you to play around and toggle different device sizes. And then from there, what you can do is easily click these different sizes up here from like in the header section. So as we can see, this is, if we hover right here, we can see that, okay, this is what your design would look like when it's running like in a 4K on a 4K screen. Looks fine. I mean, it does look a little bit small. You probably want to scale it up, but for now, it looks fine. If we click right here, now we can see how does it look like in an environment where, like on a laptop where it only has, it has not as much space as a 4K display, but still a pretty standard size for a laptop. Okay, the design still looks fairly good. It's readable. It's viewable. Everything there looks pretty good. Now let's go to even a smaller laptop. Again, still looks pretty good. Looks very, very fine. Nothing wrong with that. Now, if you go even smaller into like a tablet environment, okay, now we're starting to see something that's a little bit different. We're starting to see that our information for our team member is now being pushed over to the right side of our our card right here, and now we're given now we just have a limited amount of space to actually see our information. Now, if we go even smaller, let's say like a mobile device, now we can start to see that our design is really starting to break down here. We have a little bit of padding or margin on to the left, but we have nothing on the right hand side. And we can see that right here, our information for our team member is completely almost not even legible. You might have like a few words going down in a column, but for the most part, it's not a really good view, not a really good experience for your user. What you would really have is more like the information maybe float down here underneath the team member image or some other design. Now, if you keep going even smaller, we'll see that it just doesn't get any better at all. Now here is the design that we are trying to build towards. Now let's actually look at this one again. Let's do an inspect. If we look at our design on a 4K display, pretty much looks the same as our first one. So no change there. And if we look at the laptop, same thing. There's really no change there. Everything still looks good, looks fine. Now let's continue to go even smaller and see how our design looks. Okay, looks fine, nothing out of the ordinary, still looks good, looks legible, nothing there. Okay, we're still having the same problem that we had on the first example, but it, for the most part, still looks fine. We're still in the laptop space constraint, so okay, fine there. Okay, now as soon as we break into like the tablet size range, now that we can see that our design has changed a little bit. Now it's a little bit better. Now it has our information, instead of being everything in a straight line going in a horizontal fashion, now we have things moving into a more column stacked orientation, where we have the two different cards are stacked above each other, which is looking a heck of a lot better than what was the previous one. And now if we can actually go back, toggle back to our what we will have here, and as we see, we go back to the tablet, and we can see that yes, the information just doesn't look good. But if you go back to our what we're trying to build towards, now from a tablet standpoint, it looks way better. Now we can actually, now if we would just to leave it right there, it would actually look completely fine. Looks very good. Even on a smaller screen, it will still look good. And from right there, your job, your task, for the most part, could just be marked as done. But let's say we want to make it even better on a smaller screens. Now let's see how would that look if we continue to shrink our design down, go more, and there we go. Once we get into the onto like the smaller tablet range, closer towards the mobile sizes, we can see that our design has completely changed from what it was originally. Now we have our team members' images as the first element within the card, and all of our information is underneath that element. And as you can see, it does that for our first team member and our second team member. And as we continue to shrink, we can see that is indeed, for a mobile standpoint, looks really good. Looks really good. So yeah, and so that's pretty much what we're trying to build towards for this particular project. Now, like I said earlier, you would typically have your design come to you when what they call a mobile first standpoint, where your design will look like this from the standpoint of, let's say we didn't have the time or the energy or the effort to actually make our design look better on larger screens, and this is pretty much all we had. This will look kind of out of the norm on a larger screen, but for the most part, it will still work. It will still work just as good as it is how it looks right now on a smaller screen. But as we go a little bit bigger, it just changes the design to make it flow and feel a little bit more professional on larger screens. But again, what you want to do really is focus on how does it look from a smaller screen standpoint, specifically in this day and age of how more and more people are browsing websites on their phone nowadays. That's pretty much why you want to go for a mobile first approach instead of kind of like instead of going in the opposite direction. Okay, so now with that being said, now let's go back to our code and start adding our media queries. Now let's just add our first media query. So now let's take a look at what this media query is actually doing and go from there. Okay, so what we're saying is that this is how you actually define a media query. Basically, you're going to start it off with this construct right here and just add that. And then what we're going to say is that, okay, right here, this is saying that we want to target the medium width and going up, meaning start at this point, did this many pixels and go upward, meaning that at this breakpoint, which if you go back to our design over here, will correspond to the width. So we're saying that, okay, once we start at say what is this? So start like right around here, we want to start to change our design. So from here upwards, so maybe like 700 pixels and upward. Okay, so what we're going to want to do from there is we want to start changing before we start defining what we want our CSS to look like from this media query upwards. We actually are going to want to change how our CSS looks on the smallest screen first. Again, that's going back to the concept of mobile first. We're gonna want to head to our team members section right here. So we are already defining it as a flex, but what we're gonna want to do is, since like the default flex column is a row without specifying anything, but like we said earlier, we're gonna want to have it as as like the stacked stacked column approach first. So what we're going to want to do is call it flow direction column. Instead of the default being the row, we're going to want to have it as flex direction column first. So we're going to put that, and we're going to go back to our design and kind of reload it and see how it looks. Okay, so automatically we are looking a heck of a lot better. Now, if we look at our design on larger screens first, like on a laptop or even on the 4K monitor, the 4K display, we'll see that it's always in that stacked column look. So that's what the medium width is going to come into play. We're going to say that once it gets to this width, we're going to want to change it to not flex direction column. We're going to want to change it back to a row. And then this is pretty much what you do here. You just take your CSS, which CSS class that you want to target, and put it inside your media query. And then we're going to want to change the flow direction to row. So then if you come over here and reset and reload it, now we can see that automatically our design has gone back to that horizontal look on larger screens. But if we go back down to smaller screens, smaller and smaller and smaller, there we go. It changes back to that column approach. But what we actually gonna want to do, if you go back to our, we see that it actually should turn into that column approach at a earlier point instead of at a smaller point that we have here. Like when it's around like the 700 range, it should turn into that column approach, while we have it still in a row-like design at that higher width range. And so actually what we should be doing is, we don't actually want, which means that we're going to actually need to define another media query that should change at a earlier standpoint. So what we're going to do is this from here, instead of having it defined at a lower threshold, we're going to raise the threshold a little bit. Okay, so now if we reload it and shrink it down towards the 700 range, and there we go. At the 700 range, now it becomes like that stacked approach. Okay, so there we go. Looks pretty good. However, what we want to do is that, like we done like on the like here, as we get into the smaller range, we actually are gonna want to move our image to the first element. And so to do that, what we're gonna want to do is actually change how our team member information actually also gets changed. So let's go to our, so pretty much this is what we're going to want to do. We're going to want to have our team. So we have our team members, which will be our two individual cells or team member cards. And now we are going to have the team member information, which is all of the information inside here. Again, at these higher breakpoints, we want to at this you're gonna want to keep it as like this in a row going from left to right. So what we're gonna want to do is go back up just like we did with our team members. We're gonna want to define our team member section. It's mobile first one to be the column. So again, if we come back over here and we shrink it back down to a smaller screen, there we go. That's basically moved our image up here to be the first thing, and then our information. But as you can see right here, now we need to tweak the actual team member image size. Again, how do we do that? First thing first, same thing as like we done with our team member and team members section. We're going to want to first, let's first grab our team member image and actually set that. Let's actually set the size for those